All right. You guys keep sending me videos to react to, so I guess I'm going to start reacting to them. Let's go ahead and get started.
Texas has been on a banning spree lately. They banned weed, they banned dilders, and now they're banning social media for anybody under the age of 18, which is finally something that I agree with banning. This is a very touchy and controversial subject for people who want to be able to use social media to lure minors to meet them in dark bathrooms. There's also naysayers who say that kids will just be able to figure out a workaround and they'll be on social media anyway. Only the smart ones, and I'm less concerned about those ones being on social media, homie. Personally, I don't let my kids have social media. I think if Chris Hansen has taught us anything, it's that shit ain't safe. But there are parents out there who don't want to take the time to actually raise and or supervise their children who are upset about this, and there's a lot of pedophiles out there, and this is going to mess up their whole dating game. I don't care about those people. I'm all the way with the but what do you think about this? Do you think that it's fair for Texas to ban social media for people who are under the age of 18 or not? Let me know right down there in the comments.
Look, I've served in the Virginia General Assembly for 10 years now. I've actually served on the committee where we hear legislation like this. I've submitted legislation around things like AI generated, and making it illegal to generate that, depicting somebody else. Here's what I would say. When you write laws like this, you do have to be very, very careful. I'm assuming, I haven't read the law yet, I've just looked at this video, but I have a feeling that what they're probably going to do is say, hey, all social media sites, you need to do some sort of age verification or parental notification before an account can be set up. Now, obviously, we all understand that simply because someone's gone through that process doesn't mean kids no longer have access to social media. So what do you mean they're banned for social media? I mean, they can't see it at all? I get the concern, right? And every concern that he brought up is a legitimate one. Let me go ahead and offer a counter perspective on the other side that is not coming from anybody that isn't concerned about social media for children or, wants to support abuse for children. Quite the opposite. I'm a homeschool parent. Does that mean I can't set up YouTube videos for my kids to watch? With respect to their education? And maybe his answer is no, it's worth it. It's worth you having to go through additional steps to not give your kids access to that platform. And maybe that's the case. But the one thing I will warn against here is there are going to be potential unintended consequences. If a company has set up all the different measures that they're supposed to in order to try to prevent kids from accessing an account, and a kid does anyways, is there a penalty associated with that? At what point do they get protection from it? Are there punishments for parents? What's the enforcement mechanism? What actually causes there to be an investigation? All of these things have to be considered, right? It's not just, if you want to live in a free society that actually is ruled by law, well, then all of these factors have to go into consideration when you're writing laws like this. And sometimes it can be a little bit more tricky than we assume. The last thing I will say on this is there are certain things which fall very, very neatly into the category of like abuse or neglect, for which there is a very, very definitive and objective role for the government to come in and say, hey, you're not allowed to do this, and there's going to be penalties, restrictions, and whatnot, consequences as a result of doing these things. There's other things which generally do fall under the province of it's your job to be a parent. The moment we start saying, because a certain sector of the population doesn't manage this correctly, we're now going to say that no, this huge swath of the population is no longer has access, and there will be legal consequences for non-compliance. You can imagine the other categories of life that the government could potentially try to intrude on. So I don't know. I think a complete 100% ban of all social media, however you choose to define that, could potentially be a little bit draconian. But I need to see the law itself to decide whether or not I really hate it, or if there's actually ways that you could get to the things he's talking about, which are legitimate, while maybe still protecting certain access, which is also legitimate and not a bad thing. Oh, I've seen this guy before. Gen X Talks.
Dad, is there a reason the older I get, the more confusing life seems?
What happened to your intro? You're not going to come walking in from the hallway with, you ever wonder what a Gen X thinks?
I just wanted to get straight to the point.
Well, this will throw all your fans for sure. What's your question now? What's your problem?
Is there a reason the older I get, the more confusing life seems?
Yeah, probably.
Probably what?
There's probably a reason. What is your conundrum today?
No, seriously, Dad, listen, like everything I do seems to be tougher than it should. I hate working out, but I know it's good in the end. I hate feeling stupid on the job because I don't know anything, and I'm starting to feel like I don't fit in anywhere.
Yeah. Welcome to the world, son.
How is that the world? Like, what do you mean?
It's confusing because most things in the world are a paradox. It's always confusing while you're growing, and it's tough, and you just got to stick with it. That's what I mean.
I don't know what that means, Dad.
Okay, Learning something new makes you feel stupid until you get on the other end of it when you feel wise, like you picked up on something. Working out always sucks until you get to the end and you feel stronger. You feel weak in the beginning, stronger at the end. The only thing you have to remember is to keep going, focus, and don't give up. That's all.
I don't get it, Dad.
Okay, of everything I just told you, and more stuff too, not just that. Life disguises growth as failure. In the beginning, that's the way it feels, like you're screwing it all up. Life makes things hard before the reward. But the only way you really lose is if you quit.
Are you sure that's how it works?
Am I sure that quitting things halfway through doesn't always reap the reward you're looking for? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I don't totally get it, but I trust you.
I can't help but feeling like this. I mean, the son here is being a little bit stagey with this, but it's still interesting, right? Like, and I think the advice he's generally giving is accurate, right? It's most things that are worth having require some degree of discipline and delayed gratification. Like one of the things that can really help people right off the bat when they're saying, I just don't get it. Why does this feel so complicated? It's like, well, what are your expectations going into it? If you went into something with this expectation that I'm going to pick this up right away and I'm going to be a subject matter expert, well, then yeah, the struggle that you go through to actually learn something and become a subject matter expert is going to seem really, really painful. If, on the other hand, you go in with the mindset of, I don't know much about this, and so I'm expecting to go through a process where I don't feel the brightest, where I make mistakes, but I'm going to appreciate the fact that I'm gaining knowledge and wisdom through the process. One of the things that I told my son right before he went off to infantry basic training, I was like, buddy, there's going to be a lot of times where it just sucks. Sometimes you're going to understand why it sucks, right? You know, and other times you're going to be like, this just sucks. I don't even understand what the benefit is. I said, but son, I want you to remember something. You think of all those stories I told you about when I was in the Army, right? Things I was doing. How many of those stories, those funny stories, those impactful stories, those formative stories started off with, oh man, this one time, this totally sucked. And then I go into the story. He goes, yeah. I said, think about that as you're going through some of this stuff. All right, think about it. And I think sometimes being able, you know, a father or whatnot, being able to give that perspective, from the other side of the journey, or at least farther down the path of the journey, is beneficial. But yeah, I would say, look, it definitely discipline, resilience, all that stuff is important. It's difficult to build discipline and resilience if you're not actually getting friction, if you're not actually getting pushback. But then the other thing too is, okay, good. Change your mindset. Stop expecting it to be easy. Stop expecting everything to be great. If you don't expect that and you go in expecting difficulty and trouble, it's one of the things I love about what Christianity has to say about this. If you go in expecting difficulty, well, then all of a sudden the difficulty may still be difficult, but it doesn't surprise you. And a lot of times what I found, I told this to someone before when I was talking about the various training and schools that I went to in the military, whether it was Ranger or Special Forces or whatnot. I said, you know, I saw people who were stronger than me, more intelligent than me, more experienced than me. I saw them quit. And it wasn't because I was something special. I just made up my mind I wasn't going to leave without accomplishing what I set out to accomplish. And it was amazing how that level of resilience was enough to get you through those things. But a lot of that had to do with mindset on the outset, right? So yeah, I think this is an interesting way. The Gen X Talks actually has a lot of interesting. The dad's kind of grumpy.
The moment you leave corporate, you will actually have to relearn how to interact with other human beings. Because what a lot of people don't realize is corporate environments are a PvP-enabled environment. Everything you do, you are trying to mitigate and posture and delay and push things. It's constant PvP. So what you have to do is you like the whole thing of like, oh, we'll circle back on that later. I don't want to boil the ocean. Like that. All of it is about slowing down. I mean, your job is to be like, no, I don't want to slow down. I need to move these things in these directions. But in reality, that guy's trying to move resources around so that he can get his objectives done specifically to advance his own career in whatever way. It's all PvP.
Okay. First, I always get skeptical when it says the corporate environment, because look, are there certain things which make all corporate environments similar? There's similarities among all of them. Yeah, sure. But different corporate environments are very, very different. Right? And this idea that it's all PvP enabled, as if everybody in the company is trying to, get ahead at the expense of everybody else. I have not found that to be true. That's not to say that there weren't competitive aspects of working in a corporate environment. But in most cases, you were actually trying to work with a team, because if you worked effectively as a team, you could accomplish more that way than if you worked as an individual. And there are consequences to being the sort of member on the team that either doesn't pull their weight or is constantly backstabbing other people. So I don't buy into this whole idea of like, oh, this is just the way the corporate world works. Certainly in some cases, there's certainly both incentives for cooperation and competition within corporate environments. But I just don't buy this kind of blanket narrative that it's just all bad. If it was, none of these corporations would be producing anything. But instead, corporations produce a lot of good things, and some of them are run well and some of them are run poorly. And the ones that are made up of a bunch of people that are doing nothing but competing with one another in a destructive way usually go out of business. So I would say, while we can kind of make fun of certain aspects of the corporate environment and certainly talk about how you can have toxic corporate environments, let's not pretend that it's all that way and you have to completely get used to dealing with people again once you leave your office. But I think it's oversold. I think it's oversold.
Would you die for your loved ones? I mean, you probably would, right? Well, would you live for them? Would you fix your bad habits for them? Avoid temptation, exercise, eat right, and become a better person for them. To die is easy, but to live fully, that's a different story.
100%. 100%. This is something that whenever I'm talking to men or husbands and wives and things like that, that's one of the things I'll put out there, is that a lot of times we like this image of like a final last stand, or if something were really dangerous, I sacrifice myself for my family. And one of the things I always tell people is, look, that is the proper mindset, right? Like, I, as a man, should be willing to die for my wife and children should the situation require it. But wouldn't it be better to be good enough, right? And not to say that there aren't situations you can't anticipate, but to be good enough to be able to, one, protect my kids from that or my wife from that and overcome the situation, right? But all of those things require discipline. And so he's absolutely right. It takes a much stronger commitment and a great deal more discipline to actually do the things that would be necessary to live for your family, to live for the things that you actually care about and for the people that you love. And interestingly enough, the sort of people that actually make that kind of commitment and display that sort of discipline are not only the people that make their families' lives better, but they're also the ones that when they find themselves in a situation that if it does require that, they're the most prepared to actually engage in it. Because interestingly enough, courage, like so many other things, is generally something that is developed over time through a series of capabilities, commitments, and resilience, which is built up through that discipline that you apply to other areas in your life. So I think it's interesting enough that the people that talk about being willing to live for their families are probably the one that would actually make the right decision in a circumstance where they might have to die for their families, whereas the people that like to say that they die for them but never live for them are oftentimes just betting on the fact that that situation's never going to arise, and they can get this sense of feeling of nobility or honor that the rest of their life really doesn't justify. And so I think it's a good question. I think you words it well.
How bad is our birth decline?
It is shockingly bad. So we are now at 1.6 per woman. Our replacement rate is 2.1.
Wow.
It is going to be a shock, a huge shock, when our generation ages and there's no one there to do important services. This is how civilizations die. Like, who takes care of boomers when they're in their 80s and 90s? If you do not have a generation of workers, society starts crumbling. I'm a firm believer that the most important institution in America is the family. The family used to exist to take care of the people who were weakest. Now the state has to take care of them, which is why you see a lot of these people on the street. Oh, well, we went from 2.1 to 1.6. That can't be that bad. I mean, in a couple generations, that means that our population has shrunk by half.
In a couple of generations?
Yeah, but I actually think the bigger problem is cultural and spiritual. Feminism did change the memes and the culture, but no one talks about when you introduce birth control into a society. All of these declines in the industrial world started at the exact same time that the pill was introduced. Something magical changed in the 60s and the 70s. Abortion was made legal in 1973. Other nations followed. There's a reason why the birth rate is so low in these countries.
Yeah, she's 100% correct. And it's horribly unpopular because we're all supposed to look at birth control and abortion as manifestations of female empowerment. But I think what we have to recognize is that we were fed this line that what we wanted was like this kind of perfect equality between the sexes. Well, we can always talk about the things about like strength or speed or muscle mass or bone density, these things that convey certain advantages or disadvantages with respect to especially occupations or things within life that require physical labor. But the idea is that as we were moving toward a more complex economy, we wanted to create these opportunities. And obviously one of the most glaring difference between men and women in the physical aspect is that women have the ability to carry children and men do not. And so this got transferred from something to celebrate and to protect and to lift up into something that was a positive impediment against women getting to do the things that men get to do. And there was obviously, legitimate concerns about men not fulfilling their responsibilities to the women they got pregnant. But as you saw this shift within feminism, kind of trying to blur the lines or even what we might call traditional roles between men and women, at the same time, you had the sexual revolution going on, which was essentially saying that monogamy was something that just, old school Puritans, did, and it wasn't actually good for you and all this. Here's what I would say is that we have lived all of this out. We have lived all of this out. And not only are the people that bought into it the most, the one that are statistically speaking most likely to be diagnosed with mental health disorders. It's over 50% of liberal women under the age of 30 have been diagnosed with a mental health issue compared to I think it's around 20% for self-identified conservative women. But the population concern is significant. It is a very real issue. One of the reasons why they're justifying large mass immigration from other countries to include permitting illegal immigration is because, we've got a birth issue. Well, yeah, but how much of that is because people have voluntarily chosen to, either refrain from having kids or more likely aborting their children, or ingesting things or utilizing things like birth control, which have detrimental effects, not just with respect to having children in the moment, but impacting the way women see men. There's now studies coming out showing that a woman on birth control is more attracted to men with more feminine or softer features. You have documented cases of women who got married on birth control, met their boyfriend on birth control, got married while they were on birth control, and then when they went off birth control in order to get pregnant, were less attracted to their husbands. I think we're now just starting to come to grips with the fact that all of these practices that we put in place have health issues, they have social issues, they have cultural issues, and pretty soon they're going to have significant economic issues because, as she said, when you look at things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, these things are heavily reliant on more people in the workforce than people receiving benefits. And we are quickly approaching a point in time where that very well might not be the case. And at that point, it becomes completely unsustainable. And I have a real issue to worry about. So across the board, I think this has been bad. And I think she's totally right on what she chalks it up to. There's a lot of other factors as well, but the ones she's bringing up are absolutely 100% relevant. Okay, well, I think I'm going to stop right there so we don't make this like an hour-long process or whatnot. But if you have videos that you'd like me to react to or get my impression on, feel free to look at our link in the description. Join our Circle community. We got a whole group of people there giving me videos to react to, asking my opinions on them. Probably so they can come back and make fun of me later. That's probably what they're doing, especially you, Whitfield. Once again, thank you guys. Talk to you later.